everyone, it's Sarah and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video I'm going to show you how to make my red and white houndstooth scarf. Now this one is made in red and white, but of course the one I did previously was in black and white, and you can do any colors that you like. I'm just doing red and white now because I think it makes a great Christmas scarf. And although it looks a little bit complicated, it's super easy to do. And I think you're really going to love making one of these. And in case you're wondering, I also have a hat that I'm going to be making. It's not quite ready yet. Hopefully next week we'll have the houndstooth hat ready to go so you can make a set. And as always, this is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and you can find that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. What you're going to need to make the houndstooth scarf is 2 to 3 ounces of 2 different colors. And the reason that I say 2 to 3 ounces is because you can adjust the length to whatever you want. If you're going to make this for a really tall man, say 6 foot, which is really tall to me, you might want that scarf to be a little bit longer. But if you're making it for someone who's my height, which is more around 5 foot, the pattern is written for 36 inches. But you can adjust that, adding as many rows as you need for what you're making. The scarf itself across is about 7 inches, so that's a nice size scarf. And that's why I say you need 2 to 3 ounces of each color. You can use wool, you can use acrylic, you can use any of your blends. I do not recommend cotton for this project unless it's in a blend, because this is intended to be a nice warm scarf. I'm going to be using the I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby in the white and in the red for this project, and that is what this one is made out of. You're going to need an H hook today, 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. You'll need a needle to weave in your ends, and of course a pair of scissors. We're going to be starting with the white yarn, or whatever yarn you want for your ends of your scarf to be, because the ends on both ends will have an extra row so that the end of the scarf is almost like a band. And we'll be changing colors every row, but don't panic. I'll show you how to do that where you won't have to cut your yarn every row. No one needs that amount of ends to weave in. Alright, so with our white yarn, we're going to make our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 20 chains. And I want you to chain this initial 20 chains a little bit loose. Don't do it too tight because you don't want the end of your scarf to be puckered. So you'll notice I'm making nice big chains, and if you struggle with that, you can go up a hook size to make your initial 20 chains. Alright. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Here are my 20 chains, and we're going to begin by stitching 1 single crochet in the second chain from the hook. So we'll put our hook in that second chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through both loops. And now we're just going to stitch a single crochet in each of those chains across. We began with 20 chains, and so because we began in the second chain from the hook, we're going to have 19 single crochets. And if you want to make your scarf wider, you can add more chains. You'll need to add those in increments of 2, and make sure your final amount across is an odd number. We chained 20, and we're going to have 19 single crochets. For the pattern to work, we need to have an odd number of chains. Alright, here's my last single crochet and chain 1. Now you'll notice when you look at this, if it's puckered in at all, you've probably made your chain too tight. We don't want our chain to be too tight. We want it to lay nice and even. Alright, for row 2, we've chained 1 and we're going to turn, and we're still going to use our white yarn. We're going to place a single crochet in the first stitch. Now, for this row and throughout the whole pattern, the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. Single crochet in the first stitch. Then we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. Yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2 loops, yarn over, and go through the second 2 loops. And what we're going to be doing is alternating single double all the way across. So single in the next, double crochet in the next, single crochet in the next, and double crochet in the next. And I'll repeat this, working all the way across this row. And so I'll continue stitching a single and then a double, a single and a double, working all the way across the row. Double, single, double, single, double, and we're going to end, whoops, that red yarn out of the way there. We're going to end with a single. And we'll go ahead and chain 1, and that's how row 2 should look. We started with a single, and then we did single double all the way across and ended with a single. And that's why it's important that if you added additional chains to make your scarf wider, that you have an odd number of stitches. We're ready for row 3. I'm going to take out that chain 1. I just put it in there to hold it for a second so I could show you how row 2 should look. So I took out that chain 1, and I'm going to grab my color 2, which is red, and then I'm going to do my chain 1. It's real important when you do your color changes that you chain 1 after the color change. Alright, so now we're going to grab both of our yarns and turn our work. And what we're going to do to keep from having to cut that yarn every time is we're going to be stitching over the yarn from the previous row. Alright, so our first stitch, or our last stitch that we did, let me turn it back over so you can see, was a single crochet. So we're going to turn our work. We're going to stitch a double crochet in that first single crochet. So yarn over, make sure we go through the stitch and across that yarn that we're carrying over and stitch our double crochet. And we're going to be alternating singles and doubles just like we did on the previous row. You're going to make sure that your double crochet is stitched in the single crochet and your single crochet is stitched in the double crochet. And as we're stitching across, we're stitching over that white yarn from the previous row. So I'm stitching a double crochet in the single crochet, and I'm stitching a single crochet in the double crochet. I'm stitching over this yarn and holding it in place. And this is what it's also going to help make this scarf be a nice warm scarf. You got a little extra yarn going across. And if you have a tendency to pull that too tight or to leave it too droopy. Don't worry. When we get to the end of the row, I'll show you how to fix it really quick. Alright, so I'm just going to continue across, stitching my double crochets in the single crochet and a single crochet in the double crochet, stitching over that tail of yarn, and at first this may seem a little bit clumsy, but it's way better than having to weave in an end on every row. Alright, so I'm to the last double crochet. I'm going to go ahead and grab that white yarn back up and chain one. Now, before we do anything else, if you look at it and it's a little bit wavy, let me go ahead and pull that back out for a second. If it's a little bit wavy, make sure you don't lose your last stitch. You can pull that a little bit, and that'll bring out that white yarn. But what I want you to see is this is the back and this is the front. Where we pulled that yarn through those stitches, it's not even noticeable, and it looks so much neater than weaving in ends. Alright, so let's go ahead, grab that white yarn, pull it through that loop, and chain one. And now we're ready for row 4. Alright, for row 4 we're going to turn our work, and this time we're going to be stitching over the red yarn and stitching with the white yarn. Alright, so our first stitch here is a double crochet, so we're going to stitch a single crochet in that double crochet. Then we'll stitch a double crochet in the single crochet, and we're doing the same thing. We're stitching over the red yarn, trailing it across, and stitching with our white. We're stitching our single crochets in the doubles and our double crochets in the singles, and that's how we get that houndstooth look. And again, you can see that that red thread is not showing at all. Double crochets in the singles and single crochets in the doubles, working all the way across. It's really an easy pattern. You just have to make sure that you keep track of your singles and doubles and being careful not to pull that string or yarn that we're trailing across the back too tightly. Alright, so I'm almost to the end again. Single, double, and we're going to end with a single. And I'm going to give it a little pull, make sure my strings aren't too tight. There's the back of my work. Here's the front of my work. And what you are going to get with this scarf is that it looks great on the front and the back. And again, very few ends to have to weave in. And that's how row 4 should look. Alright, let's do a couple more just to make sure that you understand how the stitches work. Alright, so we ended with the white. We're going to bring the red back in and chain one. We're going to turn our work. Make sure I got some white yarn out here. We're going to stitch with our red and we're going to trail our white across. Our first stitch here was a single crochet, so we're going to stitch a double crochet in that single crochet, and then we'll alternate single double all the way across, stitching our doubles in our single crochets and our single crochets in our doubles. And I'm stitching across the white yarn, and what I do is I pull it across gently. I'm going to hold that with my hand just to keep it out of my way so I can stitch over it. And single, double all the way across. And also make sure you stitch your singles in the double and your double in the single, alternating. And like I said before, that's what gives us that houndstooth effect. Alright, so I'm at the end. There's my last double crochet. I'm going to bring my white yarn back in, snug that down, chain one, and turn. And again, the back and the front look almost identical, and it makes such a wonderful scarf. Alright, let's do another row of white. Our first stitch here is a double crochet, so we'll stitch a single in the double and a double in the single. I'm holding the yarn that I'm trailing across, which is the red, with my hand, and then I'm stitching my singles in my doubles and my doubles in my singles with my white yarn. And once you get the hang of this technique, it'll go like crazy, and you'll be stitching up a bunch of these scarves. I love the look of it. I love that it's an easy pattern, and there aren't very many ends to weave in. And I know I keep saying that, but I don't know about you. I do not like weaving in ends if I don't have to. There we go. Had to get a little more yarn out there. Single, double, and single stitch in that last double crochet. Switch to my red. Make sure I don't pull that. Just give it a little gentle tug there, and chain one, turn, and repeat. And you can see how that houndstooth effect is already showing up. And one of the neatest things, I keep saying this, but the only ends you'll have to weave in is your white and your red at the beginning of your scarf and your white and your red at the end. So now that you understand how the rows work, you're just going to continue to repeat our 3 and our 4 alternating colors every other row until the scarf is as long as you want it. Now, if you're doing the scarf according to the pattern, you're going to do 83 more rows, and that's going to give you a scarf that's about 36 inches. But I really suggest that you just keep going until it's the length that you want, depending on the person that you're making the scarf for. Like I said, I'm just a little over 5 feet, so 36 inches is perfectly good for me. But if you're making this for a taller person, you'll probably want to make it just a little bit longer. So here is my 36-inch houndstooth scarf. And you can see this is the front and this is the back. And I absolutely love the way that it looks. It's a nice warm scarf. You don't have to add any trim to the edges at all. It comes out nice and pretty the way that we change colors, and we don't have to weave in all those ends. Wouldn't that be horrible to have to weave in every single end? Carrying the yarn across and stitching over it is a fantastic technique. Of course, in my opinion. Alright, so once you get your scarf the length that you want it, make sure that you end on your white row or whatever row you want to match the end of the other end of your scarf. Here is the end of my scarf. I've cut off my red yarn, leaving me enough to weave in that end. Got my last row of white, and what we're going to do is we're going to just stitch one single crochet in each of the stitches across. And again, you'll have 19 single crochets unless you accidentally added or subtracted some stitches, or if you made your scarf a little wider, which is really easy to do. So one single crochet in each of the stitches across. I stitched one single crochet in each of those stitches across. I'm going to tie off my yarn. There we go. And now I just have to weave in these two ends and the other two on the other end of my scarf. And then I'm done, and my scarf is ready to either be worn or given away. I took a couple minutes and I threaded my needle with those ends and weaved it in, and I'm done. Isn't this a beautiful pattern? Now, like I said, this is our houndstooth scarf, and I have a houndstooth hat to match coming out probably the first of next week.